Has life ever come down your street, knocked you over, backed up, sat on your chest, and left you wondering if you'll ever get back up?
Or have you ever wondered why, no matter what happens, some people always seem so resilient? Today's topic: how to rise from a devastating fall.
Welcome to the Influencer's Journey Show. My name is Suzanne Hart.
And I'm Taria Hodge.
And the big question is this: how does the average entrepreneur like us, who started with limited time, zero marketing budget, or little to no presence in the marketplace, get their authentic message out into the marketplace and become a person of influence?
And what skills must you learn? And most importantly, who are you required to become to magnetically attract your divine client and build a loyal following? Welcome, Suzanne, to another episode of the Influencer's Journey Show. I'm super excited for this one.
Hey, good evening, Taria. I'm excited for this. The rise from a fall is such a great topic because we all know how devastating some of those falls can be.
Hmm.
And I can go back to countless moments in my life where I have been knocked over, felt like rolled over, and unsure what to do. So I think that it's going to be a great, great show.
Yeah, I think we all have had those moments. And for me, I recall there was a particular time in my life where I was just filled with fear and anxiety. And it was like one day I was sitting on my bed and I heard a voice, and the voice said to me, "You don't have any faith." And
Oh.
that was the beginning of my shift. So I am super excited to sit down and unpack this one with you today.
I really like this topic because this topic is actually what great fairy tales are made of, great
Mhm.
movies are made of, because we love the underdog. We love the unlikely person who life has dragged them through ditches and they're muddy and they're slugging away and they have fallen. And when they decide or they figure out what it takes to rise, it's like the movie shifts and it's like the sea parts and the sun comes out and we're so excited. We root for the underdog. And so although it's the recipe for a fairy tale, I think it's also the recipe for a great life,
Yeah.
because they say that we must have a breakdown in order to have a breakthrough. We must have that time where we're knocked over in order to learn how to get back up.
Right.
I think the big question is, how do some people seem to always be able to get back up, and other people, they get knocked down and they just seem to stay down?
Yeah.
Right. So if you're joining us, please let us know who you are, where on the planet you're joining us from. While you're here, let us know what you do and who you were called to serve. Who's that unique group of people that you are meant to touch, move, and inspire? Also, let us know what brought you out today. Put your questions in the comment section. And as we continue the show, light up the comment section, ask your questions, leave your comments, let us know what's landing. If you're listening to the replay, definitely hashtag replay and do the same thing. Light up the comment sections. Let us know who you are and where you are joining us from. We are going to have a great topic and we are going to have some fun tonight.
Oh, yeah. And then before we jump in, I'm just going to say, if you happen across this video and you have not taken the opportunity to subscribe to the channel as yet, go ahead, hit the subscribe button. That way, whenever we do our Influencers Journey Show, you will get notifications and you will be able to be a part of the conversation. And as a thank you for joining, we have a special gift for you. So if you look below in the description of the video, you'll be able to grab your freestyle speaker playbook. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you are an entrepreneur, you're a coach, you're a course creator, and you want to get more exposure without going broke buying ads, then this is a definite for you. So make sure you go ahead, click on the link below in the description of the video, and grab your freestyle speaker playbook. And it's the ultimate guide to getting recognized, hired, and paid what you are worth.
And we all want that.
That's right.
All right, so let's get this party started. For those who are just joining us, welcome back to the Influencers Journey Show. My name is Suzanne Hart, and I am here with my girl, social media strategist, Taria Hodge. Our topic today is how to rise from a devastating fall. So, where do we want to start?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that when we talk about fall, I equate like a fall to a big failure or a big challenge that you have had in life. And it's so crazy because we have been taught like failure is a bad thing, like falling is a bad thing. You definitely don't want to fall. But as I'm continue to journey through this thing called life, I realized that there's no such thing as not falling. So my first question becomes, why is falling or why is failure necessary?
Oh my goodness. You know, I have learned that the fall is so necessary. And in mindset, they say that every single one of us is going to be met with these circumstances of adversity and challenge,
Mm.
where we have the opportunity to fail, get knocked down, because we have these lessons to learn on our journey to becoming who we are destined to be. And on our journey in order to do what we are destined to do. And so I want you to think of this. Have you ever had a circumstance where you totally failed,
Mhm.
like knocked down, just failed? And the failure could have been embarrassing, it could have been devastating, all those sorts of things. Did you learn?
Yeah, that is always a question. What did you learn?
Did you learn? Did you
Mhm.
grow?
Yeah.
Did you become different?
Mhm.
And I think that's what we many people miss in the blessing of a fall. I know for myself, when I have fallen and when I'm fighting the fall, in other words, I'm in denial of the fall, I'm all up in my ego, I'm all embarrassed, and I'm in self-preservation in terms of protecting myself and my need to look good.
Mhm.
The fall is exactly that, an embarrassing moment, a failure.
Right.
However, when I get past myself and my ego and my need to look good and my need to be right, because, right fighter, my need to be in control, my need to have things work out the way I wanted, and I surrender to the fall, that is when the fall has value.
Mhm. Mhm.
And suddenly I realized that there's so much for me to learn in the middle of this fall.
Right.
There's so many things that I did not know that actually created the fall. And this is the interesting thing. Without the fall, I probably would not have known what I didn't know that I didn't know.
Yeah.
Are you guys following?
Mhm.
And so the fall is necessary for me to find my blind spots. The fall is necessary for me to run into my weaknesses. The fall is necessary for me to actually sometimes test a hypothesis.
Yeah.
The fall is necessary for me to learn that I'm not exactly the person I need to be in order to achieve the goal I want to, so I have to grow. All that becomes available from this one thing that we all fight against: falling,
Mhm.
failure, missing, making mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big gift in this thing called the fall, is that it reveals so much.
Yeah. I love what we're talking about because as you were talking, one of the things that stood out for me is sometimes how we position ourselves like to cushion ourselves for the fall, from the fall. And it puts us in a space where we don't play as big as we should be playing because,
Oh,
yeah, because we don't want the fall. And so, like I said, one of the things that I had to reframe and unlearn on this journey is that, failure is good, challenges are good, and it's the things that we should get excited to look forward to. So that has been like my pre-frame because I
hmm.
back in the past and looked at conditioning, what we, what I was taught, like it's not good to fail. And then if you fail at something, then it becomes the badge that you wear and you become a failure. Like you said, you internalize it and you kind of get stuck in that place. And so what I realize is that it stops, you from dreaming and wanting more. And I had to actually take a look at it. That's not the thing. The thing is not to, stop reaching and stretching and setting the goals. It's about really go ahead and, like how you say, be up to big things. And then know, like when you have those moments where things don't go exactly as you planned, there's always a lesson to learn. And the lesson that you learn there is going to be the thing that's going to help you, get to the next level or get to where you want to be.
Yeah, it's interesting because probably for the first 30 some years of my life, I probably lived life with the brakes on.
Mhm.
Or live life on defense. Now, what's really interesting, Sharia, is while to many people who knew me, they would say I lived life totally on offense, taking on all these challenges and all of these things. This is what I knew, though. I knew I only took on challenges that I thought I could win,
That you go in.
that I could win. And if I took on a challenge that I thought I might lose at, I would bail and make up an excuse, like it wasn't for me, didn't really want it, that sort of thing. And it was when I was in my mid-30s and I started looking at these patterns in my life and realizing that I was living in fear. So I was living and hiding behind perfection, waiting to know I could nail something, and in many areas of my life that knowing didn't come, because the knowing won't come while you're standing still in perfection.
Right.
And therefore I was avoiding doing all these things that were uncertain, thinking that one day while I was standing still in all my uncertainty, I would collect enough knowledge to move, but that knowledge never came because it didn't have to, because I was standing still. And so I think when you talk about, living life on defense, living life in perfection, it's really just a recipe for playing small. And I played small for the longest time while still looking good. So this is what I'm going to ask everybody. How many of you are looking great, but to yourself, that you're not playing full out, you're playing small? And whether that be in a relationship, because I can be in a relationship and be present, but not vulnerable. And I'm still playing small. I can be in a relationship and be present, but not be fully self-expressed in terms of communication, which is another form of vulnerability. I can take a job and only do what I'm asked and have no initiative because I don't want to fail or I don't want to risk putting myself out there. I can do so many things and do it just enough to say I'm showing up and I'm playing, but not enough to make a difference and play full out. And I think what we're talking about is, in order to play full out and have impact, failure just comes with the territory.
Yeah. And I like what we're talking about here, because I think this is the distinct difference. These are the things that we know for ourselves. So it doesn't necessarily show up on the outside where someone will say, hey, you're playing small, or you're doing this, or you're not doing enough of. But it's that thing that you feel on the inside to yourself, like, when you're holding back, when there's more that you can do, but like you said, you're gripped by the fear. You don't want to face the challenges or go through the adversity, or even put yourself on the path to learn something new. That's when you play small.
It's interesting because many of my jobs, I would arrive and I would be that person that would push the envelope, challenge every policy, all sorts of things. I don't know how some people actually worked with me, but anyway, that's just who I was. And then there'd be this constant pace of growth for me that I found exciting. And that was really when I was risking failure and playing full out. And then I would get to this place where everything happened with ease.
Mm.
And most people would say, oh my gosh, she's come so far and she's finally in this place where she's living the rewards of her growth. And that's when I would be like so bored
Because it's
and
time
ready
to
to
grow
leave
again.
and ready to leave. And I think, one of the things that I always remind myself is when things get too comfortable, that it becomes dangerous.
Mhm, mhm.
because
Mhm.
because because stability is dangerous.
Right.
Comfort to a certain extent is dangerous. Familiarity to a certain extent is dangerous. And we don't think it's dangerous, but it truly
Yeah,
is
because
in a world where things are moving at warp speed.
right. And it's like what you just said. And I remember having conversations around that particular word, stability, and what it means for, some people and how they actually process, stability. And it could lead into a place of monotony. Things could become very mundane. You could, like you said, just stay in the rut because in your mind, it's stable. This is safe. And then
Yeah,
you tell yourself, there's no other place that I want to grow into. So you just stay at this level, stability, the comfort, that's it. And I think that that's the secret, is when you have decided that you are always going to be on the path of constant growth, you're going to consistently challenge yourself to new things, then you really look at stability, like you said, a different way. You look at being comfortable a different way. And these things aren't it. They aren't the things that
yeah,
challenge us and help us to grow as, as people. And
absolutely.
and like you say, evoke change, because I think that that's one of the things that we all want, no matter what facet of life or area of business we're looking at. We all want some type of change to a certain degree. And so if you're not willing to redefine these terms for yourself, stability, comfort, then you're just going to remain stagnant.
Do we all want change, do you think? 'Cause I think I've met some people that they don't want change at all. They want more, but they don't want change.
Well, let me ask you this. So do you think, is it that they don't want change, right? Or they really do want change, but they aren't willing to take the step to risk and know and go after the change that they really want to see?
See, that's why I said they want more. They
Mm,
don't want change. Because
mm,
I think many people want more money, they want more opportunities, they want more life, they want more freedom, they want more. However, in order to have more of anything, change is required. And I think
mhm,
there's a lot of people that think that they can do more of the same thing, and
mhm.
doing the same thing should get them more. And
Right.
that's why people will come and say, I am working so hard, but nothing is changing. And
Mhm.
they don't realize that working hard doesn't give you more. Working differently
Yeah.
gives you more, right? So, and I think what it is oftentimes people are like, I'm in this space and I'm working really hard, but they're not embracing different and change in order to get different and change.
That's
And so I think people do want more. They don't necessarily want change.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Learn something new today, different perspective. There you go.
Right. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. And I know for myself, I can tell that when I was at the end of my working for someone else,
Mm-hmm.
I kept complaining because I wanted more. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted more money. I wanted more freedom. I wanted more opportunities. However, where I wasn't going to give me more, no matter how hard I worked. And I worked long hours and I worked hard. However, to step outside of the box of security called a job and go where I knew more lived was scary. So I complained for 3 years, working harder and avoiding different, which would give me more.
Yeah.
I know it intimately. Yeah.
Okay, good, good, good. So I have another question for you. So why does the fall or failure become some people's identity?
Oh my goodness. That is a question. That is the question. And I think that in order for failure not to become your identity, in my mind, you have to see value in the fall.
Mm,
And I think oftentimes the people who the failure becomes their identity is they actually don't see value in the fall. They see loss in the fall. They
mm,
see trauma in the fall. They see embarrassment in the fall. They see failure in its
mhm,
true sense. I am not good enough. I am not enough in the fall. And I think when we start looking at the fall from that perspective, the fall becomes all consuming,
mm,
right? The fall becomes um, who you are. It's not what happened. It is now who you are. And then who you are almost becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think the other thing is once it becomes who you are, it becomes your identity. You start dragging around that fall with you for years. And anytime you think of doing different, you go back to the fall and go, man, I don't know about different because remember when the
right.
last time those things happened. And so I know for myself that what began to give me access to seeing the fall as valuable
Mm-hmm.
and seeing the fall as having worth was sitting in gratitude for the fall.
Mm.
And I remember the first time I was told to sit in gratitude for the fall, I was like, what am I grateful for? I'm in a mess. And this is not fun. What am I grateful for? And however, when I started thinking about it, change only comes when you are in gratitude and
Right.
welcoming the thing that's happening. And so I started looking at it as a river, if you will. And every river has a current.
Mm-hmm.
The current is the flow of the river. Now, if you're Suzanne, you're going to swim uphill against the current and fight really hard to avoid where it's going. That's the fall. The fall
Mm-hmm.
says, things are going this way. But I want to avoid accepting the fall. So I'm going to fight against the current.
Mm-hmm.
It was when I began to turn around and say, man, you know what? If I surrender to this current and be grateful to this current, it's going to move me. And it's going to move me in a direction I didn't think of going.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the fall became valuable. Until then, it just became something that I needed to fight against and I couldn't accept.
That's such a great analogy. And it's interesting that you choose to use that analogy because I know we probably have some super achievers out here are wondering, like, if we're in a current, we're trying to go somewhere and we get swept up in the current, and the current takes us in another direction where we don't want to go. Naturally, the thing to do is to fight against
Yeah.
the current, because you don't know where the current is going to take you. And so how could that be a good thing? And as I'm listening to you, it brings to mind a an encounter I had with a gentleman one time when I was at the beach.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the water, and he shared a story with me that he swam too far and he didn't realize that there was a current. And he said once the current swept him, he realized that he had to make a choice. And his choice was, if I fight against the current, what would happen? Eventually, I would get tired and I would drown and die,
Mm-hmm.
versus allowing the acceptance myself to relax and let the current take me, and
Mm-hmm.
just trust the process and know that I would be okay. So he surrendered to the current. Now, what
Yeah,
was
that's some
really,
scary stuff.
I was just about to say, and I'm sitting here, and as he's talking to me, I am edging closer and closer to shore.
I'm not
Because
surrendering to joy.
you said it happened here on this beach in these waters right here. Let me back up like 10 feet, okay? But what was really interesting that he shared with me was when he surrendered, he drifted for hours.
Oh my.
Yes. And he ended up on another beach. And by time the current subsided, or wherever the current took him, not too really sure how the process was, he was able to swim ashore. But when he looked at it, he was not where he started out at, and not where he intended, to be. And so as I listen to you, the moral of the story is, it is going to be okay, because he came out alive,
Yeah.
definitely lessons learned. So I didn't ask him what his process was. Is it not to go past the buoy? Because clearly that's why we have markers. I didn't ask him like what, like the learning lessons outside of that one. So that was the big one. But as I sat here and I listened to you, and it's just like, it's absolutely correct. So many times we do that, right? We struggle, and we struggle so much that we don't even realize that the struggle is to our own detriment. So
Yeah.
sometimes if we just relax and trust the process, and like they always say, go with the flow. You go with the flow, you never know where you'll end up when you go with the flow.
And I think, what's really interesting about this is that, when we oftentimes when we fall, how often do you just go into survival mode?
Mm-hmm.
All your defense mechanisms kick in,
Right.
and you are fighting the fall. You're fighting, and you're like, what could happen? What are people going to think? Oh my gosh, I can't believe this has happened to me. All what I'm losing. We're fighting the fall, and we're in total survival.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's really beautiful about the analogy is sometimes we got to surrender long enough
Right.
to look around,
Right.
long enough to assess what's available, long enough to actually experience the current, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and choose. And I think what happens is, oftentimes when we fall, we don't actually stop long enough to do an assessment and to ask what are the lessons, all the different things. We just react and defend.
Mm-hmm.
And all our coping mechanisms fly up. And I think it's because we define the fall as a bad thing.
Mm. Right.
And I think as long as as long as failure is defined as a bad thing, we are going to hit the
Exist.
ground
Yeah.
and go into survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once the fall or failure is just part of the inevitable process, we are going to hit the ground and look around for the best way up or the best direction to go. And so I think when you talk about people, the fall becoming someone's identity, is I think that they are so attached to where they were going and what it was supposed to look like and how it was supposed to happen. Ever done that? Right? That when you fall and something starts taking you in a different direction, you start fighting it because no, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is when it was supposed to happen. This is what you said. And now we're not open,
Right.
because we so identified with this thing and it becomes who we are.
Yeah.
And so, I know for myself, some of the hardest things have been is to let go of what I expected.
Yeah.
Let go of how I thought something was going to look. Let go of how I thought this class was going to show up. When I started speaking, and actually more so training, you ever have that person in the room who asks a question
Uh-huh.
and then the question takes on a life of its own?
Uh-huh.
And there's some trainers that will shut everything down because they got to teach everything they prepared.
Yeah.
A great trainer will live in the moment
Mm-hmm.
and say, this moment will teach us more
Right.
than what I prepared. And so I think it's that sort of thing, is how attached are you to how something is going to look, or are you committed to an outcome? And I think that's where, I have trained with people who are so in their head about what they prepared, and it's so much their identity that they're rigid in it, and they miss the opportunity for magic to happen. And then I've trained with people who they fully prepared, but they take in the lay of the land and they use what's available to them to create the moment. That's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I have another question for you. So what does it take, to rise from the fall? What does it take to go from, surviving to thriving?
Choice.
Ooh, I like
One.
that.
I think you've gotta choose the fall,
Mm,
right? And what I mean by that is you got to choose to accept the fall. And that's the first thing. Because how many of you have found yourself in a circumstance that you didn't like and you didn't want to accept it? Ever have that happen?
oh yeah.
Like, this is happening and I really don't like it, and I'm just going to deny that it's happening. I'm going to avoid it. I'm not going to talk about it with anybody. It's going to be top secret. I'm not going to let anybody know what's going on. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm,
So that's the first thing I would say is one is to accept the fall. I think the second thing would be, after I accept it, is to be grateful for it.
mm,
Now, that's a tall order sometimes. However, I know for myself, the moment I sit in gratitude for something, whether I ask for it or not, it changes my energy and it changes my perspective.
mm,
Because when I'm not in gratitude, all I can see is what's not working and what didn't go right.
yeah.
When I sit in gratitude, I am now got to look for, what am I grateful for
Right.
about this moment? And the moment I start looking for what I'm grateful for, I've shifted my perspective, I've shifted my energy, but more importantly, I'm looking not at what was wrong, but what's available.
Right.
And it's in when I'm looking for what's available that the diamonds start to show up
Mm-hmm.
in the fall, right? Those things that made me go, ouch, when I fell down. Now that I'm looking at them and going, oh, I fell on a diamond, dang. Let me pick it up and it
Mhm.
has a lesson and a message for me. Let me pick up something else. It has a lesson and a message for me. Let me pick up something else. It has an opportunity for me to learn where I need to grow. All those things can only be available when I shift the lens to which I'm looking at the failure or the fall.
Right.
And I think it is, I rise because you know that, let me see how I'm going to put this. When I am looking at the negativity of the fall, it's sucking my energy. You ever have that?
Mm-hmm.
Woe is
Mm-hmm.
me, and I'm going lower and lower and lower. I can't get up from there. I'm going down. But the minute I sit in gratitude and I pick something up that's a gem, my energy changes and I get lighter and lighter and lighter. And now the rise actually becomes easier because I'm picking up these things that pull me up.
Right.
So I don't have to work to get off the ground. I'm actually picking up the things that pull up my energy and pull me up. So I think the first thing is to choose to accept that you fell.
Mm-hmm.
Second is to be grateful for the sprawling embarrassment of the fall. And then rather than scramble to get up and pretend like nothing happened, is to really take some of surveillance of the land and look at what you fell on.
Yeah.
Because
That's really,
whatever hurt you might be there because you needed to be hurt. So you pay attention. Whatever bruised you, you
yeah.
might need it to be bruised so you can pay attention. What you didn't see and you tripped over might have been there because you needed to see it,
Yeah.
because it's been
That's really good.
stopping you over and over, and you've been tripping over this damn thing and you need to move it. So I think it's when we start looking for what's on the ground of the fall that rising becomes so much easier.
Yeah. I love it. That was so great. I love it. I love it. I love it. Ooh. So I'm gonna ask you, we talk about, the what it means to overcome adversity and challenge. And I love that, we've made the distinction between surviving and thriving.
Well, actually, we have not actually made the distinction between thriving. We've made the distinction between surviving and getting up.
Okay. So what is the difference between surviving and thriving?
I had this conversation with a client about a year ago, maybe 2 years now. And what I said to her was thriving is a choice. Surviving isn't.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is that when we're in survival mode, we got thrown into a bad situation.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? So you going along and life hits you a curveball and you get thrown into something and you're just like, you're on adrenaline and you're in survival mode. You're gonna get up, you're gonna do all the things that we talked about. Thriving, however, Sharia, is when you're comfortable, things are going beautifully, everything's sailing around, and now you're saying, oh, I've been here a little too long. Things are a little too easy.
Mm,
Let me choose discomfort. Let me choose a situation that may result in a fall.
mm,
Let me choose something that may allow me to fail and welcome it.
yeah.
Now you're thriving, because thriving is to choose discomfort
Mm,
because you desire more.
mm,
Thriving is to choose risk because you want bigger. Thriving is to say, I don't know where I'm going or how we're going to get there, but we're going to go anyway. And I know I'm going to fall and I know I'm going to trip and I know I'm going to get bruised, but it's worth going. That is thriving. And in my mind, very few people choose thriving because most people only step out when they're forced to survive.
mm. So I think what I'm hearing here is really interesting. And so when we take a look at thriving and we apply thriving. We say, oh, this person is thriving. What we see is the end, you know? And I love the fact that you took it not to the end, but you took it to the beginning. And these are the steps that are required, you know, for you to do if you want the end result, which is thriving.
Yeah, because you see, we, as you said, we see the end, but when you take it all the way back and you look at people who are truly thriving, it may have started out of survival, but once they got their bearings and they got comfortable, oftentimes they chose more.
Right.
And in choosing more, they knew that they were going to risk failure, they were going to risk adversity, they were going to miss looking bad, they were going to risk all these things, and they chose it anyway.
Yeah.
And we don't see the journey that comes with thriving, that's often painful, that has disappointment and has all these things. So why do we keep moving? Because more is worth it.
Right. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I have a question for you. So I always like to know, like, what's inside your head. So, so when did
How much
you?
time do you have?
So when did you first become aware of this process?
Oh my goodness. That's a great question. I think there isn't a time that I became aware of it. I think
Mhm.
I became aware of it in hindsight, if that makes sense.
Okay. Mhm.
So I know that one of the big things I learned on my network marketing journey was to tuck away my pride.
Mm.
And I went into network marketing, I would say, quite prideful and quite sitting in perfection, which is born of pride, and quite wanting to look good and failing while trying to be on defense, do just enough, but
Mhm.
not risk too much because I didn't want to look bad,
Right.
and nothing was happening. And so I had to get real comfortable with failure
Mm.
a lot. Call sales calls and presentations and fail. And then I realized that every time I failed, there was these opportunities and gifts and gems that made me good. And I think it was on that journey that I redefined failure. I think it was when I stepped out and got bored with network marketing. I got bored, actually, like I got bored with my job and got into network marketing, got bored with network marketing and decided to become fully self-employed. And it was during the time when I chose to become fully self-employed, and everybody was saying, but you're doing so well
Mhm.
over here in
Right.
network marketing and you're making money, and you just got to keep doing what you're doing. And I kept thinking, if I have to do this for the rest of my life, I'm going to
Mhm.
lose my mind. This is
Right.
boring. And not to say that it was boring for everybody, but I think for me, just because of how I'm wired,
Right.
growth and different is essential. And it was really doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so I wanted different. To choose different was, for me, was to thrive.
Mhm.
And so I had to choose to risk what I
Right.
had.
Yeah.
And it was only when I got out there and had to step out on faith and trust the process and fail and do it over and over again that I began to understand that this is what thriving looks like.
Right.
Is not going back to what you know so you're safe, but to go out and recreate in the face of I don't know because you want more.
Right.
And so I would say I first began to know it when I was able to turn around and go, whoa, when did that all happen? and to know that it all happened because I chose it, not because I had to,
Right.
but I think because I chose it, and then I chose not to go back.
Right.
Because we could all, you know, you can jump into discomfort and go, oh, that's way too uncomfortable, and jump back into comfort. I've done that a few times in the past. I think is when when I understood thriving is when I was like, oh no, I got to stay out here
Yeah.
because there's things I'm supposed to learn. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'll be okay.
That's
So
that's good.
I think that's when that, you know, hindsight is so 2020, so
Hmm.
clear, and so full of gems. Let me ask you this, as you've been listening, and now we've defined, you know, what the fall is,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
we kind of redefine failure. We know why certain people fall and don't get up, and we know what it takes to get up. So, what was an event in your life that because you chose to surrender to it,
Mm-hmm.
and you chose to not make the fall your identity,
Mm-hmm.
you chose to look for the blessings and the gifts in that moment, and the blessings pulled you back up. What was one of those incidents that because of it, you know, you are a much better person today? You are a much more developed person. You have access to more today.
Wow. And I have to choose one.
Well, I know we got many. Here's one that stands out for you.
So I think the biggest one that stands out for me is is my divorce.
Mm,
And I remember in that season and going through that time, it was so challenging. It because once again I was just stuck in the emotion of it.
yeah.
And I remember there were times like so many countless sleepless nights that I experienced. Like I said to the top of the show, just living in anxiety, you know, worried about everything. And
Mm,
in my mind, it's like you I'm telling myself, it's so different, it's so new. I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it. And I wore it like such a huge badge of failure. Like, you know how some people say badge of
yeah.
honor? It was a badge of failure. And I remember just one day, a voice came to me, and I would like to believe that it was God speaking to me. And he said, you don't have any faith. And what was really interesting at that point of in my life, I remember I used to talk about faith all the
Yeah.
time. And, you know, like you don't have any faith because if you had faith, you won't be having sleepless nights. You won't be racked with anxiety. You won't believe that you won't come through this. And it was so
Hmm.
interesting. Like the moment I had that thought or I heard that voice, something inside of me shifted.
Yeah.
And the process of the things that started to happen in my life, you know, I like I said the same thing. I'm just gonna accept this. And so I looked at the move, and what I was dreading with anxiety became such an easy, simple process. And I look back and I was just like, I can't believe that I actually had anxiety over this. Why? Because in my mind, I was trying to control every single aspect. I wanted to know every single detail of what was
Yeah.
going to happen. And
So
I know,
you could prevent something from going wrong.
yeah, and so I know when we talk, you always laugh at me because I've always been that person who would go read the end of the book. I read the last chapter of the book and then still go back and read the book. Like, tell me how it ends and I'll be okay. And so that was my thing. I want to know, how is this story going to end? And he was just like, my child, that is not it. And I
That is
surrendered
definitely not life.
and so I, it's surrendering to the process. And then like you said, I started to notice these beautiful things that started to come up. I realized that one of the biggest things I realized what was happening for me is that a fertile ground was being created for me to fully step in to what is it that I do now. He had to put me, or I look at it this way, he put me in a place that would allow me to fully embrace what I'm doing now and give it 100%. He put me in a place where I was able to meet people in my network, and so that was my first indication that, yeah, go with the flow, because there's always a plan. Even though you don't know what the end is, you don't know what the steps is, be open. And so I used to tell myself a lot of things on this entrepreneurial journey, like, yes, I'm going to step in here, and in 4 years, I'm going to be able to retire and do all of that stuff. Yeah, no.
I'm laughing because I could so relate.
didn't quite didn't quite happen that way. And so I remember, even at that point, at the 4 year mark in my business, the thing that I said, what I'm committed to is I'm committing to figuring it out. Like, that's the only commitment that I have, is to figure it out. And with that being said, it just means being open.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. I think for me, and I hope for everyone listening, every super achiever listening, the redefinition of failure and falling has been one of the biggest gifts for me.
Mhm.
And you hear it from the Michael Jordans, I've missed more shots than I've made. You hear fail fast, fail quickly. Les Brown, when you fall down, make sure to pick something
Right,
back up. I don't know the exact quote. You hear all these things, and they're not cliches. It's actually,
right,
there's a lot of truth in that. And so my desires for every super achiever listening, to know that if you are in this place where you feel like you've fallen, celebrate it,
right,
embrace it, welcome it. One is because it means that you have been in action.
right,
And two is it's an opportunity, if you choose to look around, if
right,
you choose to ask great questions. And so don't allow the failure to be your badge of honor, to be your identity, to be that thing that you drag around. Allow yourself to surrender to it and surrender it and redefine it as a gift, an opportunity, a growth moment, whatever you want to call it, and get back up. And when you get back up, you will be stronger, you will be wiser, you will be braver, and you'll have something new in your toolkit. And that's what it's all about.
yeah.
So what's the thought you want to leave everyone with, Tria?
So the thought that I'm going to leave everyone with, it takes but one positive thought when given a chance to survive and thrive, to overpower an entire army of negative thoughts. And that's by Robert Schuller. And
I
I'm
love
gonna,
it.
yeah, and I'm gonna say I absolutely love this quote, because it's the thing that settles me when my mind is going into those places where I'm worried about the 1,000 outcomes and they're not positive at all. So it's just to just have that one positive thought that will shift everything.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just anchor it and say, so step into gratitude,
Yeah.
and gratitude will give you that one positive thought to get you going, and watch the magic happen. So you have been watching the Influencers Journey Show. I am Suzanne. This is my girl, Taria Hodge. And we will be back here next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But until we do meet, please know you are brilliant. Know you are oh so very special. And we do this work because the world is waiting. The world is waiting for your unique gift. Blessings and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Bye, everyone.